I am here with Matthew Kocel, cosmic throat singer, sonic alchemist, leading the global sound healing movement with his primal and soulful music. So, Matthew, thank you for being here. And I've listened to your music, it is so beautiful. I'm really curious as to what has inspired the transition to your higher calling from a previous life as a rock bassist. And as you mentioned, you were a down and out rocker. Um, and you had this transition. I'm curious to know what that was for you and how it led you to do what you're doing today.
Mm. Well, we've got a lot to unpack here. Thanks for having me, Tara. I really appreciate it, and really glad to be here. So, to sum it up, pain is what brought me to this path. I've been a spiritual seeker all my life. Uh, Grew up in a family that was pretty middle of the road in North American terms, as far as we went to church every Sunday, and I always believed in, a creator, called it God. And when I was 12 years old, I had an experience where I now realize my crown chakra opened. I didn't know what was happening there, but it happened through that framework of the Christian uh, religion as it was being practiced in my family. Um, However, I've always been a questioning soul, and I had a lot of questions that were unanswered, and um, didn't get the answers I was looking for. That things didn't add up with the way I saw scriptures being interpreted, and um, how the religion um, framed spirituality and the spiritual quest. So, and also there was a lot of conflict in my family. I was the youngest of three boys in my nuclear family, and yeah, a lot of not fun things happening. uh, and so breakdown in communication, and not being heard when I was speaking my needs, not being taken seriously, and I withdrew, and I also withdrew from my family, and withdrew from the religious framework that had been presented to me. And so I was had nothing to replace this with, though. So I was without a spiritual path or practice through my teen years, and fortunately, music really spoke to me and was my saving grace. It just gave me a glimpse of empowerment and a glimpse of higher realms. I remember so many times just sitting in between the stereo speakers. We had this old 1960s stereo console with a turntable, and just sitting in between the speakers and just going to heaven, with the music. And so I dabbled in different instruments growing up, and by the time I got into high school, I took up guitar and singing, and I wanted to recreate that transcendent quality of music. And also, I had been around, small situations, small social situations where someone had a guitar and was singing, and I thought, oh, it just moved me so much. I can do that. And so I wasn't overly exceptionally talented at it or anything, but I had the passion for it. And so after high school, I studied music in university for 2 years. In the second year, I took up bass guitar. And in my second year of university, I was studying, still studying music. But I was living at home that year rather than on campus because my father was in the process of dying. And I was very inspired by Jimi Hendrix. Well, still am, but I was really getting into him at that phase of my life. So I was reading the biography of Jimi Hendrix, and I was commuting to school with a friend, classmate, and bandmate. And one day on the way to school, got out the book. We had an hour drive ahead of us, and my friend put in a tape of an album I hadn't heard before. And all of a sudden, I'm reading lyrics to a song that they're describing in the book, and I realized that Jimmy was singing the very words that I was reading in perfect timing. So it just, that blew me out of the water, and I took it as a sign from God, Jimmy, or the universe, and took a vow at that point that whatever it takes, I'm going to do this. So I had no idea how hard and painful whatever it takes could turn out to be. But I did, I quit school after that year and moved to the nearest big city, Denver, Colorado at that time, to join a rock band, join a working rock band. This was in 1982. So in those days, there was live music everywhere. In small towns and big cities, there were clubs, nightclubs, bars, everywhere had live music. That was a major form of entertainment. And so you could join a cover band playing other people's music and go on tour and eke out a living. And that's what I did. Um, and so a couple years into that, 2 or 3 years, give or take, and I realized that's not going to get me where I really want to go. So I began working day jobs so I could have my evenings free to create music and focus on writing and performing original music. And that severely restricted or reduced the number of potential venues to share our music. But there were certain showcase clubs and special nights in town where we could go share our original music, and that was a huge growing experience. And I went through a series of projects, and the music kept getting better, but the bands kept breaking up, and my social circle was pretty small at that point. Mostly, I was my closest friends or around me were my bandmates, and a lot of these guys were super talented, but also had some, issues they're dealing with, some with addictions and whatnot. And so, as I'm progressing through my 20s, I was just in this very socially isolated place and spiritually isolated as well. I still hadn't found a real path or a way to connect. After my father passed, though, that life beyond this body was certainly on my mind. And so I was wanting to, I had this deep burning desire to connect with source, to connect with my soul, with my heart. And I just didn't have a way. I knew I didn't want to go back to church. I knew that much. Um, so I was going deeper and deeper into depression. And when I hit my later 20s, 27, 28, 29, it got really heavy. In astrology, they call that era of your life the first Saturn return. And it's very common to question your reason for existence at that time. And I was certainly full on into that. Why am I here? What do you want with me? And so it got to such a low point that I didn't know if I could go on. And that low point was when I decided I just have to find a path. I don't know where, I don't know what, but I have to find it. And I know it's out there. I saw it as out there somewhere. So I went to a bookstore, started looking around, and I found a book called Inner Power Secrets from Tibet and the Orient. And this spoke to me. I opened it up and I was reading about concepts like chi, prana, life force energy, connecting with these through the breath and with intention, meditation, and various martial arts energy cultivation exercises. And so I bought the book, and in the first chapter, they're talking about the seven base chakras. And as soon as I started reading that, I realized here is something that's true. This is real. because I have felt things in each of these areas, specifically relating to the impulses and the energies that they're describing. For example, base chakra. Every time I've been on the edge of a tall building and look over, I get a rush there right between my legs, or looking over a cliff. It just lights up, you know, and on up. When they got to the crown chakra and talked about our connection to spirit, I realized, holy crap, coin a phrase, ironic phrase there. That's what happened to me when I was 12. My crown chakra opened. And, so I was all in there. And I also realized eventually that commitment that I made that day as a 12-year-old, that was real. And no one could take that away from me, regardless of whether it fit into any presupposed dogma or opinions about how things are structured in the higher realms and who creator is, what creator is. Didn't matter. I made a soul commitment, and it's mine. So this was a major breakthrough for me and gave me some hope and something to work towards and something to work with. Within a year of finding that book, I went into a metaphysical store for the first time. First time ever walking into one of these crazy little shops. And I walked in, as came in the door, I walked into a wall of sound that I'd never heard before. It was really loud and then really deep, and it sounded kind of like voices. And I asked, "What is this?" And they said, "It's Tibetan monks." And I said, "What?" I've got this book, Inner Power Secrets of Tibet and the Orient. I'd never heard of this, though. And so it was the recording of the Gyoto monks, an order of monks from Tibet who do this deep throat singing chant. And I didn't know what a mantra was. And I was intimidated by the sound, but I was also attracted at the same time. So I bought the tape and took it home, and I started to meditate to it. And it just felt oddly familiar. And so that was percolating in me as well. I was continuing on the path of, forming bands, building them up, watching them blow up. The music kept getting better. And the professional situation did not get better. It was just more struggle, and always felt like I was going against the flow. And for example, like I was doing more during a time when there's people, the glam bands with their big hair and spandex, and I was doing more of a blues rock Hendrixy kind of thing. And then speed metal started to come in, and I'm doing something that's more like, I don't know, progressive hard rock and not screaming like a demon. So yeah, and then my last band was ironically called Critical Mass, but there's no mistakes here. And this is more of a kind of, I would describe it as progressive rock, but labels are just absolutely insufficient to describe music, I find. But to me, it was the pinnacle of my creative process at that point in my life. And also the vibe within the band. We were like four brothers, and I love these guys, still love them today, and I still listen to the music. But in the summer of 1994, my day job at that time, I had been working for 5 years as a manager, mostly day shifts, at a very high dollar, big fancy strip club. And I'm like, I needed a job, and long story, but that's where I ended up. And it was a steady paycheck, and the hours were right for me to have that room to create music. I'm spiritually awakened to a degree enough to realize this is not where I need to be, and I'm dealing with a lot of dark forces, and I'm in this cauldron of the human shadow, where all of the you know, lower desires are being played out and magnified, and conscious and aware of energy and protecting myself energetically at that point. Looking back, I now know that I was also getting really good training and grounding, not just myself, but a space and a room full of people. So that was like boot camp, grounding boot camp. And it turns out that there was much less violent incidents on my shifts than when other managers were working. And even when we had bouncers on staff, there's more trouble. Um, they were holding a different space than me. I was motivated strongly to study martial arts and train hardcore during that time because of the obvious threats to my well-being and people around me. Um, so that helped me come into deeper connection with, my warrior self and the protector archetype. But anyway, I kind of digress there a little bit. In the summer of 1994, I uh, went camping and climbed a mountain in South Park, Colorado, and got to the top, and I just blurted out without thinking, "I wonder if there's any crystals around here." And I turned, and there was this crystal shining in the sunlight, waiting for me. And I picked it up, and I was just blown away, and kind of felt like I was being watched. And my life changed in that moment because by the end of the day, I could hardly hold on to the crystal. I had it in my hand for most of the day, and that evening, I had to put it down because the energy was just so strong. It was just like, and so a few days later, I'm driving back to Denver, thinking and saying out loud as I hold the crystal, "I gotta get out of there. I can't do this anymore." Getting really depressed thinking about going back to work in that environment. So I show up for work the following day, and my boss was waiting outside the club with tears in his eyes because he really liked me. And with my final check in his hand, he was laying me off because he was losing money and couldn't afford to pay me anymore. So I was immediately set free from that environment. I had been, speaking out loud to the universe that it was time for me to move on, but I didn't really have a plan other than I was attracted to healing arts and meditation. I wanted a more holistic lifestyle and a more spiritual focus in my life. I didn't know how I was going to make that bridge. So I guess life made it for me. Um, my band, Critical Mass, we were scheduled to go into the studio that night to record a demo, and we had 5 nights scheduled, and we did that. Uh, Music sounded beautiful, and the band broke up 2 months later. So found a crystal on a mountaintop in South Park,
Changed your life.
and yeah, the ground fell away underneath my feet, and there I was standing there in the void, wondering what's next. And so I kind of floundered for a while, but then I found my way into massage therapy school and started getting Reiki training and got into meditation full on. And I quit music. I had put the bass away, and I wasn't even dabbling at that point. I was like, I'm done. This is it. I'm going this way. And I just felt like humanity needs healing, and I'll start one body at a time. And I recognize the physical body is of the earth. We're connected to the earth. We're from the earth. We're part of the earth. And so my intention has always been to heal the earth through humans. And so once I started my practice, I cleared out all the furniture from my living room, threw up some cushions and candles in the middle of the room, a few crystals, and started leading guided meditations. And it worked. We were going into really deep connection, and people were having some extraordinary experiences. It turned into twice a month thing. It was just ongoing, and I still have very good friends that I met for the first time when they walked into my living room in my bachelor apartment in the middle of Denver, Colorado, during those days. Well, as I was leading these guided meditations, eventually, English language is pretty limited when we get into the spiritual realm. So at some point, words weren't enough to convey what I was felt like needed to come through. So I started to Om, and I've been playing with my voice and playing with Om, and hearing the harmonics present in the voice. Um, didn't expect that people would respond so strongly to it when in the meditation, but they did, and immediately told me how they felt it moving through them, around them, and feeling their energy shift. So that sparked my interest, and I'm still listening to this recording, the Tibetan monks, and every once in a while trying to figure out, whoa, whoa, how do they do that? Whoa, whoa. And it wasn't working, but eventually I was able to reproduce that sound, the deep throat singing sound of the Tibetan style, and that really lit a fire under me. And so as I continued to play with the voice and with the transmission of the sound for spiritual connection, and also I was starting to incorporate it into my private healing sessions, uh, I started to hear melodies, and so music snuck back into my life through the healing arts, through the meditation, and yeah, and the pain that was driving me to find a way to connect and to dig deeper into myself, to find how I plug into the universe and where I belong, my place in that. And here we are.
Wow, there are a few things I want to unpack with that. That was fantastic. And I can relate to so many of those moments where, yeah, questioning where we are, who we are, our path in life, and then just having something, some synchronicity show up in our life all of a sudden to just say, look over here, or how about this? And then all of a sudden just opens up something within you, which is really cool. And it just listening to your story, it's such a testament to understand our life from a bigger perspective. And we can get so granular and so fixated on what isn't working or the problems in our life and get stuck, where when we take a step back and we look at our greater timeline, I mean, hearing your whole story is just this beautiful flow of experiences that have led you to where you are today. But I'm sure in some of those moments you were not feeling very,
No.
very clear, right? And
Yeah.
so it's so fascinating how that happens. And I go through it myself, looking back and then seeing, oh yeah, you had that training ground in that space or in that work environment to hold that space for others. And it led you, and all these experiences that we can encounter that build us, build our skill sets, build our talents in very obscure ways that we can bring into the future, bring into the present moment. So it's really, really awesome. And I'm curious, this might get a little bit personal, so I hope you're okay with the question, but
Sure.
this is something that I have had to work through myself, and I related to your past experience that you mentioned with your family growing up, not being seen, not being heard. That was something I also experienced, but it also played into the challenges that I've had to face speaking in front of people. And so I'm curious, because you have your throat singer, that's one of your skills, and to channel your voice to heal others and to resonate with others. So did you have any barriers that you were facing personally, or even just in your throat chakra area? I'm curious as to if anything showed up for you in that way.
Yeah, just taking the leap as I guess as a teenager to pick up a guitar and sing in front of people
Mhm.
was a huge leap into, or just like jumping into sticking my head in the lion's mouth, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just knew I wanted to do it. And I wasn't thinking of, okay, this will enable me to speak more freely to other people or in front of people, but that was a long-term effect. And yeah, as I started to get more confidence in that, it's kind of easier when you have a wall of sound behind you and a backing crew. You have a band and you can like belt out tunes, and you're in a bar where people are drinking and partying, and so that was less confrontational to my ego, I guess. But singing and chanting in a more intimate environment where, for example, in a meditation or in a one-on-one healing session, that also was a huge leap into the unknown. And sound healing was not a common frame or a common term or something that most people had even heard of um, back when I started delving into these waters. And so, yeah, it was pretty out there. And so, just having that courage to, I just had to find it within myself. Like if I was doing a one-on-one healing session, I would just maybe at the beginning wait till the massage and energy session was over and say, hey, I'm doing something else I can give to you or offer you, and or do you want to try this? And so I'd throw it in there then, and the feedback was usually positive, and so yeah, just I found the openings, the entry points, those little cracks in reality where I could slip in there and let it grow. And like water taking that path of least resistance, and it can go into the cracks between the rocks and open them up, and it moves with the temperature changes as the environment changes, and as water freezes, it presses the rocks out and breaks them down, opens them up even more. So yeah, I guess I was being like water and finding those openings. um, and yeah, it was crazy that I just thought, okay, I'm going to lead guided meditations now. I didn't have any experience with that, but something, that urge inside me was there, and so I'm going to give it a try. Sometimes, people would be coming into my living room, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. What am I going to say? And I'd sit there, and once we were all in place, and just tell announce to the universe or to the creator, uh, I don't know what to say, so I'm not going to say anything until you show me something or give me some clue. And so something would come eventually, and we never sat in silence the whole time. So, um, so all these things helped to open up my throat chakra, and I feel like now I recognize that working with harmonics and overtones, which are already present in our voice, but finding ways to amplify them by changing the shape of my biological instrument, um, that also helps to to chip away at the shielding that we put in front of the throat chakra, and that restricts our communication, our higher expression. And I see now, I believe that all forms of expression, both verbal and nonverbal, voice activated and non-voice activated, all forms of expression do run through this throat chakra. And so, as I have taken students and taught workshops and helping people to find the expansion of their voice through the harmonics and the overtones, that some people start doing things that they've wanted to do forever, but were holding back on or procrastinating on, or didn't feel the courage to break out and do, and they just suddenly they're free. So that whole process of giving myself permission to explore my voice, first in private and then taking that in public, and having that interaction with other people, has been a steady empowerment of the voice. And the fact that I can, just be here with you, speaking to thousands of people, perhaps through this podcast, and sharing vulnerable parts of myself is testament to that, of how strongly it works when we start the process and continue to move forward into the unknown, and face our shadow.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I love that. Perfect. Um, this is a good segue actually to go into the mechanics of throat singing. So we are going to go back into the shadow. There's a lot to unpack here, so I'm trying to keep it a bit focused. But um, I remember hearing Mongolian throat singers about 15 years ago, and I fell in love with the sound. And I remember at the time I was working in marketing. Actually, I was working in a digital marketing agency, and there was a sound specialist in the company he'd create the sound for a lot of the marketing campaigns and whatnot. And he gave me the whole rundown on the mechanics, like the actual physical mechanisms that were happening to create that sound. And I'd love for you to break it down a little bit if you're able, for those watching and listening, because it's quite fascinating.
Sure. Excuse me. First of all, throat singing, aka overtone singing. Some people will try to delineate, oh, this is true throat singing, this is overtone singing. Whatever. We're expanding the we're making more available to the human ear the overtones that are present in the human voice. We all are creating harmonics and overtones with our voice anytime we speak or vocalize in any way. So first I need to explain what an overtone or a harmonic is. These are interchangeable terms. They mean the same thing. A good analogy is if we pluck a string on a stringed instrument, let's say a guitar, and our ears register the pitch. This is the note that the string is tuned to. And so that is the fundamental tone that we're recognizing. And it's created by waves. The string is moving through space and it's creating these waves in space. And those waves hit our eardrums and we detect it as vibration, and it's translated into sound in our brain, in our consciousness. So those waves that are moving from the source of the sound, they double in frequency and then continue to multiply into infinity. So these multiplications of the fundamental tone are the harmonics or overtones. It's like additional notes stacked on top of the fundamental tone. And they, to the typical listener, provides the color of different instruments. That's why you can tell the difference between, let's say, a clarinet and a guitar playing the same note. There might be, the fundamental might be on the same pitch, but you can tell the profile of the sound is different. That's because they each create harmonics in different magnitude through that harmonic series. So as a throat singer, overtone singer, we are shaping the sound. We're bending the sound by changing the shape of the biological instrument, and to amplify specific overtones or harmonics so they're more audible to the human ear. As I said, they're already present. Like I'm speaking right now and there's overtones happening. And if I just went, overtones are right there, right in that speaking range. It's all there. We just don't hear it. We don't recognize it. But as I bend the sound, then I can amplify the frequencies that I'm choosing, and they sound like additional voices singing along with the fundamental tone. Now, the deeper sounds that throat singers do, and which I first heard in the Tibetans, and you also hear, for example, Mongolians and Tuvan throat singers, they call it kagara or kagara. That's their term for it. And there are many traditions of throat singing around the world, which I was until recently unaware of, but it turns out it's all over the globe. But this particular low undertone is created by activating the ventricular folds in the throat. And the ventricular folds are adjacent to the vocal cords. The vocal cords are basically vertical. They're two membranes tiny little membranes in your voice, and they're slapping together. And they slap together so fast it sounds like a continuous tone. A lot of us who've played with our voice might do this. Slow it down, and you can hear the individual slaps of the vocal cords. A lot of singers will do that now in pop music. They call it the vocal fry, where it sounds like they're tired. No, sorry, my voice isn't warmed up. You hear them kind of to color the tone or to add emotion to their tone of their voice, that they're slowing down the vocal cords. So anyway, that's what the vocal cords do. They're slapping together really fast. The ventricular folds are on either side of the vocal cords, and we normally don't activate them unless we're clearing the throat or coughing. That's when they activate. So a person doing this throat singing technique finds a way to activate the ventricular folds along with the vocal cords and relax everything else around the ventricular folds, so you're not creating undue tension on the vocal cords and destroying your voice, and you get a sound. We'll see if this comes through. Get a sound something like that. Yeah, we'll see if that translates in the recording.
That's great.
Yeah, but that's how that sound is created. And for me, I just run with that, and I can, with all the other techniques that I learned of overtone singing, throat singing, I can take that multi-tonal sound and shape it and undulate it and make it expand and contract and swoop all over the place. And I think the mechanics of how that interacts with our psyche is the way that the overtones are created are in geometric proportion or mathematical proportion. It's really all of this universe is sound. All of the physical form in the universe is an expression of sound. Everything is vibrating. The energies of subatomic particles, because they're really a wave, are vibrations that appear and disappear. And so it's this rhythm and movement at every level of existence, from the micro to the macro, and the sound mirrors that structure of creation. And so nature has its own ratios, the golden mean ratio, the phi ratio, the Fibonacci, all these patterns that repeat themselves from the smallest to realms up into the galaxies, and how the universe is structured. And our body, mind, spirit recognizes that structure, that harmony. And I think there's an opportunity with exposure to that for healing to occur. But beyond the mechanics of the sound itself, a greater factor is the emotional state of whoever is creating these sounds. You can feel if you walk into a room where it's not safe. If there's an unsafe person in there, or if someone is really loving, they have an open heart, because the heart is emitting an electromagnetic pulse that is thousands of times stronger than that of the brain. And this can be felt, it can be measured with our primitive technology, off the body. And I'm sure, as we develop the technology and contribute or continue to develop the technology, we'll find even finer manifestations of this phenomenon of the heart emitting electromagnetism and maybe other forms of energy. But we now know that when we're in a higher emotional states of love, gratitude, rapture, awe, appreciation, then it's like turning up the volume, and there's a coherence to the waves. In other words, the peaks and the troughs of a wave are equal. they're symmetrical. Whereas if we're in anger, fear, jealousy, vengeance, then it's like turning down the volume, less amplitude, and it's static. It is incoherent frequencies. So I always tell people, like, yeah, I have all these crazy acoustic instruments and I do all these sounds with my voice. The main instrument's right here, right here. It's my heart.
Yes.
And that is what entrains whatever I'm doing with the voice, whatever I'm doing with an external instrument. That's where the magic is. And yeah, I see a lot of people think it's something that you do, but it's really more a state of being.
Yeah. Yeah. I can hear it in your music. Yeah, absolutely. So just as we start to conclude here, I'd love to hear your thoughts or your insight on us being our inner guide, our inner healer, if you will. We did touch on it before we jumped into this conversation. And we were talking about how it's very common to look externally for answers, or even look externally as the external being the problem or being the challenge in our life. So maybe take us through that and how sound can, I think you already did touch on it, but even if you want to connect it with that aspect of ourselves.
Yeah. Of course, I believe our soul lives eternally, and we most likely take lives here many, many times, and perhaps we've left breadcrumbs on the trail. We have to do the work ourselves, and no one can magically touch us and heal everything in our lives. We have to be willing to face and deal with whatever um, whatever is hurting us, whatever is taking us off our center, whatever is distracting us from our connection to source, to the source of everything. When we can get glimpses of that connection, then we're bringing coherence into our body and into our lives. Um, what is coherence? It's that just like that example of the wave coming off the heart. When we're in the higher emotional state, there's symmetry to it. We know now that nature has its own vibration, its own patterns that are obviously creating harmony, to have this living biosphere that provides everything, including the elements of our bodies and everything that sustains us. And yet with our technology, we've created this artificial energy field. We see it in radio waves, television, Wi-Fi, cell phones, radar, whatever other surveillance technologies are out there. And also, as humans, we're being affected by the destruction of the biosphere. Since our bodies are of the earth, whether we were conscious of any, deforestation or not, our bodies are feeling it because it's part of the earth. What we do to the earth, we're doing to ourselves. And so there's a collective anxiety, and things are changing so rapidly. So there's, and of course, war and all types of horrific abuse that humans are doing to each other. We're all affected by this, consciously or not. And so these are all incoherent frequencies. And when we can bring coherence through a consciously directed, coherent sound, then it creates a gathering point, a rallying point for coherence to open up, an oasis amongst the chaos. So, let's say in a small gathering, or in a large concert, my position is to open that door. I call myself a glorified doorman. Let me open the door for you, or let me show you to the door.
Right.
Like Morpheus said in the And the Matrix, it said, you know, I can only show you the door. You have to walk through it or
Right.
not.
Yeah.
It's up to you. So yeah, I'm a doorman, and so my job is to mind my connection, to go into my heart, remember why I'm doing what I'm doing, and to go into that space. The music just helps me go deeper into that rapture. Um, just it just does, and so then people who are present, they feel that vibe too. They can do it as well, and so it just starts to pop, and it happens so quickly that the energy in a room will shift like that, and people can. Some people will go super deep, like right off the bat. People who thought they couldn't meditate, suddenly they're in some other space that they've never experienced before. And you know, I don't consciously control where everyone goes, but it's been really humbling to get the feedback consistently in different parts of the world and to people with different cultures and different walks of life. That, you know, how profound the experience can be for people, and whether it's a physical, you know, somatic experience and feeling energy move through the body, sometimes even pain showing up and then disappearing, or, you know, having dreams or visions or realizations. It's just off the charts. And, you know, I forgot what the original question was.
I think you got it.
Okay.
You did well.
Okay.
You did well.
I'm going into
So
that space.
it's all good. I know I was feeling it over here. So okay, so just as we finalize here, for those who are searching for their path and for those who feel like they have a higher calling and are in the in-between stages of that, their the life they've been living, but wanting something more, what pearl of wisdom can you offer them?
This came to me in a dream once when I was on Hornby Island in BC alone for a night. First time there in the middle of the woods, sitting outside of a caravan where I was going to spend the night, and I had just prayed, okay, angels, guides, nature spirits, God, whoever, you want to talk to me, now's a good time. I had this dream, and someone was talking to me, like giving me all this information, and I started to become lucid within the dream, and which was causing me to wake up. And the last thing they said to me before I opened my eyes was, find the entry point. And when I woke up, find the entry point. What else did they say? I couldn't remember anything else. But with time, I realized that the entry point can be next breath. It can be your next thought. It can be any pore in your skin. It can be any moment in time. It can be any frequency, all you 432 hertz people. It can be any sound. It can be the next song you hear on the radio in your car. It can be a little snippet of overheard conversation in public. The entry point is everywhere. It can be in any atom or any subatomic particle, but the entry point is all around us. And if you just shift your awareness to look for the entry point into your infinite self, seek and you will find. Knock and the door will open.
There you go. Thank you so much, Matthew. And so, how can people find you? You have events, you have music available as well on your website, Spotify, YouTube. I'll leave links, but if there's anything else you'd like to add.
I do teach vocal activation through throat singing and overtone singing. And I feel it's really important that we collectively reclaim our voice, our true voice, and activate the throat chakra. It can help energy move from our lower centers up to the higher centers and help us make the connections that we need. So I'm teaching in-person workshops, vocal activation, throat singing. I have one coming up in Surrey in a couple of weeks, but there will be more in the interior, I'll be going back to the Okanagan and to Vancouver Island. Um, Eventually, I'll be touring again. So wherever I go in the world, I'll try to arrange times to have at least a 2 day immersion into exploration of the voice. And I usually keep the classes small, like maximum 20 people, so I can give everyone individual attention and feedback, and also do transmissions directly into the throat chakra to help activate. I'm working on an online course, so that will be hopefully coming, within the year. Online course to help for this process because I can't be everywhere all at once physically, not yet anyway. Working on it, um, and yeah. So currently, my website is Om Shaman, SHAMAN.com. I'll be switching it over to MatthewKocel.com, but either way, if you just Google my name, I'll show up like magic on your screen and you can find me. So seek and you will
Yeah.
find.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you again. That was wonderful. That was beautiful. And Matthew Kocel, everyone. So look him up. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to be unfolding in the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you.